go through them, it was like, oh man, I wish I never made that mistake again.
Yeah.
But you know what? Yeah, you don't want to make the mistake, but what you did, you learned from that.
Learn from it.
Right?
Yeah.
Like you said, retrospect, you look at yourself.
Yeah, the lesson is much more important than the failure itself.
Absolutely.
And if you could have that kind of attitude, failure becomes not necessarily routine, but it becomes part of the process. I think routine is important because the more routine you do, the less surprises you have.
Right.
I think mental routines are more important than just like busy. So, for me, it's prayer and meditation. You create these habits that are much more beneficial. So when you get in these moments of like challenge and when doubt starts to creep in,
correct.
You lean back on your routine, on your habits to help you get through it. Yeah.
Welcome, guys, to another episode of WAMGET podcast. Today, we're going to dive into imposter syndrome and how to really take control of that. And I have some guests with me, Romeo, Azana. So let's jump into this. My buddy.
How you doing, man?
What's up, Ro?
It's good to see you.
I
see you got the Eagles green.
You know how we do. Fly, Eagles, fly.
Congrats on the Super Bowl.
We went hunting.
Definitely went hunting.
Yes, sir. How you been, man?
I've been good. I've been doing really good. Yeah, I appreciate the
man.
opportunity to join you here on the WAMGET podcast. And,
I appreciate that, man.
You're a busy guy too. Oh, yeah. Sometimes it can look like that. Yeah.
So for you to come out, man, I appreciate that.
Absolutely.
We can dive into this conversation because,
definitely.
I think it's a struggle that people have, about themselves, about their accomplishments.
Yeah.
And how real is that?
Yeah. I think it's really real.
It
real.
is real.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And I think we all try to achieve things. Sometimes we question, did we really do it on our own?
Yeah.
It wasn't really us.
Yes.
What's your thought? What's your take on that?
Man, I think it's human nature.
Yeah.
It's part of your your self-efficacy.
Yeah.
And how self-efficacy plays a role. That's the belief in your abilities and your ability to achieve something.
Yeah.
And I think it's a natural reaction to developing that.
Yeah.
And self-efficacy kind of defines like how much imposter syndrome you have.
Facts.
So the more or less you believe in yourself will determine, how imposter syndrome kind of maturates and kind of shows up in your life.
For sure.
And oftentimes it's really about finding out what the root of it is.
Yeah.
Why are you having these sort of self-doubts and, challenges with your own abilities.
Yes.
When oftentimes, and that's why they call it imposter, you're actually doing pretty good.
Right.
So it's trying to understand what those dynamics are internally.
Yes.
And why they're happening that way.
Yeah.
Cause everybody, is going to have a level of it. We've all been not so confident.
Yes.
Or, challenges believing in our abilities or accomplishments and things of that sort. But even in the world, the world is kind of built for you to always be in competition.
Yes.
You always see someone who's doing it maybe a little bit better.
Right.
Someone who's a little farther along.
Yes.
So you start to do this comparative thing, right? And it's a natural thing to start to then doubt yourself. But there's ways that, in my experience, I can only speak to my own lived experience about it, that how you kind of overcome it. Because, I'm a professional in higher education. I'm a vice president. I've been in different roles that are very challenging in academia. I'm also an entrepreneur. And I have a nonprofit. So even with all of those things, sometimes some days it's like, can I really do this? Or am I really the right person? So no matter what the accomplishments, there's some moments, there's these moments that you still have.
Man, well, you covered a lot there, but so tell me a little bit, since you dive into the entrepreneurship and all the stuff that you have. So walk me a little bit through like the stages, how you got to where you got to, and when did you start feeling like, or a moment where you experienced that, oh God, did I really accomplish that?
I would say, well, I'll start off with academia because I think that's where like probably I could speak to it the most. When you are in that sort of world where everybody has, you know, some kind of what's called a terminal degree. There's always this sort of competition that exists around it, and your qualifications do matter. You know, whether you have a doctorate, whether you're, you know, how many courses are you teaching, or like me, if you're in administration, how many years of experience you have running like certain departments. So I think early in my career, I kind of moved very fast because I was doing some good work at the universities and colleges that I worked at.
Like you moved up.
I moved up the ladder pretty quickly because I was very passionate about my work, and that translated into the hard work, but also really achieving a lot in a very quick amount of time. So I remember, like, one example is, you know, when I was teaching, and I taught like interdisciplinary studies, sociology, psychology, those kind of things. At those subject matter areas. And I remember my first course that I taught at the collegiate level was actually a graduate course. The dean of the department believed in me so much. They were like, hey, we're going to give you this 500 level graduate course. So I walked in in the classroom, and, you know, I'm really excited. And then I realized very quickly, you know, at the age of, I think I was 23 maybe, everybody's older than me in this class. You know, like, so it became very real, and they let me know too. They looked at me and they were like, whoa, wait a minute, you know, what's happening here? So it took a moment to really, doubt crept in, you know, and I was very qualified, obviously. I was a subject matter expert at the time, and I felt like I could do it. But when you're confronted with that, you start to kind of peel back the layers a little bit, like, oh my gosh, am I really qualified to teach this class? Why did this dean put me in this position? You know, that kind of thing. You know, they're all working adults, and here's this 23-year-old teaching them at the graduate level. So it was a little challenging, but, you know, what happened in that moment was I started to reinforce not only my qualifications, but the why. Like, why am I doing this? Like, if you can just settle down a little bit and think about your why, and your why in terms of your purpose of whether it's education, whether it's business, whether it's you know, community work, you go back to the roots of it. And essentially doing that in that moment helped me realize, you know, I'm meant to be there. I wouldn't be there if God didn't position me to be. And certainly, you know, there was some work that I had to do internally to be able to facilitate the class and not let, you know, what I perceived as my students at the time, who were all older than me, you know, not necessarily believing in my qualifications or whatever the case may be. And after like the third class, you know, I got my rhythm, and I was fine. You know, and they appreciated that. And they had a lot of jokes about my age, because some of them found out very quickly. But it was great. It was a great dynamic. I learned from my students, and they learned from me.
That's awesome. So. That's awesome. Did you always have that, like, self-reflection about you growing up?
Not always. It's a developed skill, and I encourage everyone to try to have some level of that what's called introspection. So you take a little bit of stock of yourself, and what are my areas of strength, what are my areas of need, and what are some opportunities that, you know, I can take advantage of to kind of meet both of those things. I think it's from a lot of failure that I developed it. So people often, like, failure it's a very scary thing, like when you fail at something, you know, whether it's, again, no matter what area in life it is, we're all going to experience some level of failure. So I always say failure is an opportunity, and how you respond to it is much more important than the failure itself. You know, so introspection is taking a moment to reflect on how things sort of happened and how you failed, and certainly, like, what can you do to ensure that you sharpen your tool a little bit, and you know, create the right mindset to be able to not fail again, or if it's not doing the same thing again, maybe how to redirect it.
That's good. Because I mean, a lot of times we have these experiences, and we go through them, it's like, oh man, I wish I never made that mistake again. But you know what? You don't want to make the mistake, but what you did, you learned from that.
Learn from it.
Like you said, retrospect, you look at yourself.
The lesson is much more important than the failure itself. And if you could have that kind of attitude, failure becomes not necessarily routine, but it becomes part part of the process.
Part of the process.
You know,
100%.
and it's not you're not gonna hit a home run every single time you start a business.
Absolutely.
Start a ministry, start a some kind of community organization or project or whatever the case may be. You're probably gonna fail at it at some point or some aspect of it.
Listen, man. It happens. I started a business, and when I started the business, I thought it's gonna go pick up
right away.
Come in.
Yep. Media gratification.
No media gratification. You make some mistakes. You price too low sometimes. Overextend yourself more than you really needed to. But you have to learn from those.
Right.
Learn from those things.
Right. Yeah.
I've always been one of the kind of people that had enough confidence that even if it's wrong, I'm confident I'm doing it.
Yes.
So I'm not sure what part of my life that I may have experienced self-doubt, to be honest with you. But at times when you're going into an interview or to meet with somebody, like anxious. Right. Anxious is never something that's good, but it's okay.
Yeah.
Some level,
yeah.
To say okay.
Yeah.
Just take a deep breath.
Right. Deep breaths, calm yourself down.
Relax.
I always say when you're anxious about something, or when you let's even elevate it to like nervousness. The first thing you got to understand is I actually care about it.
Yes.
Right. So that's a good sign, right? In my work, both in academia and also like the nonprofit that we're at, I have to sit in front of a lot of people. I was a very shy, and I still am. I'm more of like a lot of people think I'm social. I'm not. I'm an introvert at heart. I'm so much more comfortable being by myself, doing my own thing.
Right.
But I got a role that involves being in front of people, and sometimes it's hundreds of people, right? So I still don't get comfortable getting on stage.
Well,
like I'm still not. That's okay. But there's something that clicks because I've developed a process in how to kind of manage those anxieties, that level of anxiousness, and part of it is understanding again that why, there's a purpose-driven, aspect to it, and that tends to overtake whatever I'm going through in that moment. So I think everybody's process is going to look a little bit different. Some people, I know some like really, successful individuals who still deal with, doubt and they speak in front of thousands of people, or they have to do these sort of public displays of your work or your area of profession, and sometimes they run or they work out or they different things. Everybody, you have to find like what works for you in that moment. But I also think that it's a practice, so you're not going to be the best at something the first time. The more you do it, the more you engage, the more mistakes 100%. You learn from. That's when things get a little bit easier and easier to navigate as it relates to anxiety and anxiousness and those kind of things. Now,
do you think that people should have a schedule in how they prepare themselves for these things?
Yeah, I think routine is important, because the more routine you do, the less surprises you have. I think mental routines are more important than just like busy. So for me, it's prayer and meditation. That's how my day starts. In some aspect or another. I wake up at 4 a.m. every day. I know that sounds crazy. But there's a reason why. Because I don't have the. Well, it's still in that at that time,
That's true.
When you're, I'm a husband, I'm a father, a professional. I don't have as much time to kind of navigate and maximize throughout the day. So between the hours of 4 a.m. And 7:30, it's very still for me, and no one's up at that time usually. And for me, it's a way to kind of get closer with God, meditate, pray, but at the same time, I work out at that time too to get my body physically ready. So that wasn't just like a wake up and like 4 a.m. It was a practice like I adopted. So that sets the tone for my day.
It's a good habit.
And it's a good habit to have, and then that's a great word. You create these habits that are much more beneficial. So when you get in these moments of like challenge and when doubt starts to creep in,
correct.
You lean back on your routine, on your habits to help you get through it. Yeah,
that's good. A matter of fact, talking to you, outside conversations got me into the mindset of like, I need to wake up earlier.
Yeah.
So now I do between 5:30 and 6.
Wow, it's still early.
I can't get to 4 o'clock yet, right? But between 5:30.
4 is a tough time. You gotta build your body to do that.
Especially sometime when I go to bed at 2.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's not gonna work. That's not gonna work.
So between 5:30 and 6. So like you said, to give you a chance to have a few hours for yourself.
Yeah.
Meditate, because I do my push-ups. I do my little workouts. I definitely spend at least 15 minutes, devotion.
Yes.
And then I start working.
Yeah.
So by 7 o'clock, family time, children coming downstairs.
Ready to go.
But that time is really important. Yeah. So I like that you said that, and that creates a routine.
Yes.
In doing that.
Yeah.
And I believe you can always go back to that and say, okay, you know what? I prepared myself for this. Why am I doubting myself? I prepared. I have the discipline. I know a lot of people don't have that. We struggle with that even sometimes. At times I struggle with the discipline to be consistent.
Oh, the consistency. Because life happens. Right? You're not going to be able to be. I can't wake up every day at 4 a.m. and not necessarily have some level of distraction. It might be something that happened the day before. I might have to travel. Something's going to disrupt you in some aspect. Again, I think it goes back to your mindset, right? How consistent, like you said, are you with that? So that when things go awry, you're in a position where it doesn't necessarily rattle you as much. And I also think like give yourself some grace. Like people tend to put themselves in pockets of like these expectations of not necessarily perfection, but trying to meet goals or aspire to be a certain way, and again give yourself some grace to get there. So you miss working out 2 days this week, or you didn't necessarily meet all your goals or whatever the case may be. Don't beat yourself up, because again I think even imposter syndrome is about habits, right?
Correct.
So how often are you doubting yourself during the week? How often are you not believing your accomplishments? Because you're going to build a habit of doing that. Exactly. So then it becomes a reality, right? You embrace that as part of who you are, and that's not necessarily what you want to do, right? I think we're always comparing each other too. Comparison is like the worst thing. It kills any level of aspirational goals and those kind of things, because you're on your own journey. You're not on anyone else's journey. God put you on this earth to kind of meet whatever His will is for your life, and to be able to stay on that trajectory. And I think people tend to want to look a certain way when they start to compare themselves to other people, changes their goals. Now you can always be motivated and really inspired by other people. I think that's great. But I've held that sort of practice in my mind to never let comparison disrupt my own trajectory. I don't need to be as successful as this other person to feel fulfilled. As long as I know that I'm doing what I need to do and what I set forth, those kind of things are good to do.
You have, conversation. You have siblings.
Yes.
Right? I think you say you're the youngest or the.
I'm the third. I'm the oldest boy, but I'm the third eldest. So 7 siblings total.
7.
Big household. Family. It was a busy household for sure.
So with having older brothers.
No, I'm the older brother.
You're the older brother.
Older sisters.
Older sisters.
Yes.
Okay. So they're the brothers are younger.
Are younger than me.
Okay.
They're all bigger and taller than me. But
have you ever compared yourself to them?
You know what? I had really supportive sisters.
Okay.
My older sisters, when we have a immigrant household, a lot of times you become latchkey kids, right? So you're home, and mom and dad aren't necessarily there; they're working, right? So you kind of learn the hierarchy of who's in charge.
Yes, sir.
My sisters were amazing, Nina and Larissa. They were very supportive. They treated me not only as a brother, but as like their responsibility. So there wasn't really like a lot of comparison. I didn't experience that dynamic, and I think that's a cultural thing too. Right. African households are very communal, so it's a little bit different in terms of this competition thing. Now we were raised in America, so we understood what it meant, but that dynamic really didn't play out at home. So my siblings were a big support to me, and still are today. Different things in life happen where like you're trying to, everybody's trying to move in a different direction, so that naturally happens, and you start to kind of look at like your siblings as, or where are you at, or what are you doing, that kind of thing. But no, I really did not have that dynamic at home. It was very reinforcing.
That's good. I didn't have that either because it's my sister and I. My mom only had the two of us. But at the same time, when we get older, want to make sure that you're doing well. She want to make sure I'm doing well. And the support system is very important. But you then, like you said, growing up in the culture as a foreigner, it's different. When you come to the States, you're like, okay, so this person is like that, and now you want to feel like I need to be at a certain level.
At a certain level.
At a certain level. Or I can't get into this room if I don't have X, Y, Z. So how did they get in?
Exactly.
I'm like this, right? So it feels like you want to compare yourself, but like you mentioned, if you don't have the routine, discipline, have confidence in who you are, have a mindset, of this is what I know I can do, this is what I've been doing, and my way may not look like that person's way, it's the syndrome, the mindset that we have has to do different. It has to be different.
It has to operate differently, and I think it's also about really trying to define what your actual purpose is. I noticed in periods of my life, I was the goals or things that I wanted to do were because I was comparing or looking at other people, and I started to realize this is actually not what I care about. It's not my goal. It's not my goal. It's trying to emulate something that I believe. Now, although it was a very supportive environment, like I said, culturally I'm African, so our parents put a lot of pressure on success or education and reaching your goals. So by African people, you know what I'm talking about. There's a very, very real dynamic of like, so that was pressure for school and
doctors,
like achieving doctors, lawyers. You got to be, you got to fit in one of these categories. But they were also very supportive. It's just they had a lot of high expectations. So as children and as young adults, you start to embrace that pressure a little bit. But I think in moments of my life where I realized that the more focused I was on what I needed to do, and not trying to meet other people's expectations, the more successful I became. Over time.
I like you mentioned, you didn't let your goal be what other people were doing.
For sure.
Because you knew what you wanted to get done. And a lot of times I find that, just talking to people in general, not everybody obviously, but sometimes you're like, well, I want to be this way because X, Y, Z is this way, I want to play ball because this person played ball. I want to be a football player because my dad played, which is no problem with that. Admiring, you mentioned it earlier, You have aspired to be something, be great. But what's your path? What's your vision? What's your goal for yourself? What's your what's motivating you? Right? And I think we all should have that because it's somewhere inside. It's in there. And I think as a parent, we see it in our children. And we have to help cultivate that, to bring that out. They're looking at us, they want to become a business person. Michael talked about like, I want to become a business person. I want to own my own business. Do you really though?
Exactly.
I'll teach you certain things and the benefits and the pros and cons of it. But have your own path.
It is.
Don't copy, not because I'm your parent.
Exactly.
Talking that, like, what do you think as a parent? Because you have children.
Yes, I have two children. I think I have a unique perspective on kids. Maybe not unique, but it's a little bit different. I think our kids teach us more about this area than we realize, right? Because here's the thing about children.
That's a good perspective. I'm going to listen now.
Children are curious.
They are.
They're innovative. They're not afraid to take risks. Right? And they don't necessarily listen to you the first time. Right? So, so all of that together, and they're motivated, most of the time. time. And here's one thing about children too that I think is really important. There's a famous philosopher by the name of Heraclitus, and I love this quote. It goes something like, there's nothing more important to man than like the seriousness of a child at play. And so they play, right? They know how to enjoy life. They know how to embrace that. And I think if you put all that together in like a soup,
they live in the moment.
It's like the greatest example of a successful entrepreneur, successful person, because they have all these attributes. So my kids teach me a lot about those kind of things. And as the older you get, the less you play, the less you're innovative, the less you're creative, because life gets in the way. The less you focus on your goals necessarily, because you have all these other obligations. One thing that I always wanted to do that I regret is I wanted to be like a fighter pilot as a kid. I know that sounds like really, really way off, but
fighter pilot.
But I was my like I saw Top Gun in the 80s, and I was like, this is what I want to do. Like now as crazy as that sounds, like it was one thing that I was like, I always wanted to learn how to fly, but the more like doubt crept in, and fear of heights, let's say, or fear of like, how do you kind of handle this massive $1 million aircraft or whatever, or can I really do this? As a kid, that's what I wanted to do. But the older I get, it's like, I'm not going to be a fighter pilot, It's not going to happen, compared to like my cousin, who's a commercial pilot. We had the same goals as kids. Like, we're gonna do this, You're gonna be, and he followed through all the way to like being a commercial pilot for a very well-known airline overseas. So it's like, oh man, he never left that goal, that childish sort of aspiration of I'm gonna be a fighter pilot or whatever. It happened for him, So I think along the way, sometimes we lose those qualities that our children reflect. They still need our mentorship. They still need but we can learn a lot from our kids about imposter syndrome, we can learn a lot about our kids about how to deal with imposter syndrome, because they really believe in what they believe. The innocence that they have, they push through things. And the older they get, the less, vulnerable they are, and the more influence of the world they get. Life starts to happen, so they lose all those qualities as well that I think are good qualities when it comes to dealing with like imposter syndrome, belief in yourself, or whatever the case may be.
You know what? As you're talking, I'm thinking that's a learned behavior.
It's a learned behavior.
It's a learned behavior. Because we had a path where we're free in a sense. And embrace whatever. Confident in what you're doing as a child. And you said, don't touch that fire, but you want to step in it.
They're still going to do it.
They're brave. There's no fear. So life taught us how to be fearful. Doubt, have doubt in our minds. Then how do we block against that?
Again, I think it's understanding that it's happening, like realizing,
understanding.
I have a lot of doubt, or I have a lot of fear about certain things, and it's also finding like a purpose-driven reason of why you're doing a certain thing, like a business, or if you're starting a nonprofit, or if you're in education, or if you're in any type of work, professional work, or whatever the case may be. You got to find what's driving you,
and you understand that you have the issue. Then find out your why.
Like I mentioned before, and then also start to embrace these practices and habits to get through those things.
To work through it.
There's always going to be limitations that are pressed on you, whether it's from the world, from your family, from your own personal dynamics. But finding a pathway to get through those things as well, and also understanding that it is also a process. I think that's the biggest thing for me. It doesn't happen overnight.
No.
You're gonna not necessarily meet your goal. You're gonna have challenges along the way. I remember seeing this thing online. It was like these diggers, and there's like two images of like these underground diggers, and there's like a gold on the other side of the rocks, and the person who's like 2 inches away decides to quit, you know, because in the image they decide to quit, right? And they start walking back, and it says like, you never know how close you are.
Wow.
Sometimes the struggle, the breakthrough is like right on the other side. You know what I mean? God, so it's like that little, you know, caricature image was really important. But I was like, you know what? This is a lot of people. This is me sometimes. You know, you turn around, but you never know.
You're on the cusp.
You're on the cusp of getting there. So understanding that it's a process. Keep digging. Keep pushing through. Reevaluate if you need to, but don't stop. You know.
That's good.
Yep. You miss 100% of the shots you don't take. Right. That's what the saying goes. Right.
Right.
So,
you do.
Yeah.
That's good, because a lot of times you don't realize how close you are. You don't. You don't.
No.
You don't. It doesn't seem that way.
Right.
You're working. You're grinding. You're putting everything in there.
Yep.
You're like, when is my breakthrough?
Yeah.
Why can't I be like this guy?
Yep.
You know, he just did it first started 2 months ago.
Right.
I've been doing it for 2 years.
Yeah.
What's happening? You know, and you're right there, and we just quit.
Yeah.
You know, so we have that mindset. You know, knowing that we have that imposter syndrome, understanding why, right? And work through it. Work through it.
Yeah.
It's important.
Yeah.
I love that, man.
And I think all three of those things develop the habits that you need to kind of push through it. Also, like I said, it's a natural thing. Like, people tend to think, oh, because I don't believe in myself means that I shouldn't do this, right? You're going to have that doubt at sometimes. You know, the most successful people are not necessarily the most confident. It is a process that they go through to build that. You know, so it's important to realize that too. Like, this is actually part of it. You know, part of my journey when I'm dealing with the imposter syndrome. But how do you overcome it, right? You know, how do you reinforce that this is not necessarily my reality? And I think imposter syndrome, whatever you're having doubts about, that's where you become more introspective as well. You start to look at like, okay, why am I thinking this way? Like, why don't I believe in myself around this area? What causes that? And that's where you got to do a little bit of digging so that you can kind of push through it.
How do you, because as both of us are parents, how do we say that to our children? How do we get them?
I think we show it to our children. I don't think we can say it to our children.
Show them that,
because they're watching you.
Right.
They're watching you.
They see more.
They see more than they listen to.
Yes. Than what we say.
Exactly.
Right.
So I always say, as a parent, one of the areas that I'm hoping to get better at, because that's another area of you know, responsibility and growth and all that. As a father, you know, it's important for my children to see me achieve things or follow through on things. Even the little things, like for them, it may not be, oh, well, you got this position or you got opened this business. But, you know, you told me you were going to take me out for daddy-daughter time. My daughter will call me out on that every time. And you didn't. Right. So like, how do you push through the busyness of life to meet to have what you say actually happen, right, to your children? I think they pay attention to us and how we move as well with our spouses and other people, our family members, you know, those kind of things. So I think you show your kids those things more than you can tell them, right?
That's good.
Now you can verbalize like, hey, daddy's going through this and this is a challenge and those kind of things and how you got through. I think there's lessons to impart on kids for sure. They may not understand it, you know, the way you understand it, but they're taking stock of what you're saying. But I think children take more stock of what you're doing and how you're doing it. And I think that's how they learn. And when they get to that maturity where they can start to verbalize things and get a little bit more intellectual in terms of like what's actually happening, that's where conversations become more valid to me.
As you get older, because we have younger children. Did you always have your father in your life?
My father's been there most of my life. You know, it's always been there. So I think having mom and dad, you know, reinforcing those things as well is helpful. I
only asked that because we're talking about, you know, children. Because I know I didn't have my dad, but my mom was that. You know, always built confidence in me. You know, She made me think I could achieve anything.
Yeah.
There was that verse, I want to do this. You go get it. You go get it. You know, so I've always had that confidence in myself to an ability to do certain things. But like you said, life hits. And you start feeling like,
I think that's one of the things, critical things that my parents always did was, you know, they reminded me of who I was. That was really important because even in moments of failure, you know, having supportive parents and people who can push you through is critical. You know, but not everybody has the convenience or the luxury or of having necessarily people who are doing that in their lives, right? So where do you find it? You know, and how do you sort of have a community around you of people, mentors, and people? That's another way to kind of battle imposter syndrome is finding a mentor.
Find a mentor.
That's the mentorship is so underrated. You know, because if you have somebody who is in your life who is pouring into you, and pouring into you doesn't mean telling you everything you want to hear. Sometimes it's hard conversations. Sometimes it's stuff that you do not want to deal with, that you're stuck on, and they may look like the enemy in that moment because they're telling you stuff you don't want to hear. But finding someone who helps you through that, through a mentorship, I think is really important too.
You need that.
So family, mentors, you know, learning from other people, community leaders, leadership in general. You can always find someone who is doing something that you know took a lot to get there, right? So having conversations with them, you know, and just say, hey, can you impart some of your, you know, challenges and you know moments of like, you know, success and what it took to get there, you know, that kind of thing.
And don't be afraid to ask that questions because that's another thing. Feel like, okay, should I ask the question? You know, who am I going to ask? You know, Mr. Romeo about how to do business. You know, Mr. Wayne about how to do business. You can. You just make that step. Ask the question because that's how you come out of that.
I always see most people who are, in my experience, you know, there's some people who are not going to necessarily be mentor material, right? It's going to happen. Let's just be real. But most of the time when you ask people who have achieved certain things, they're pretty interested in telling you that, you know, like this is actually what it took for me. And everybody's a little bit different, right? I always say in my life, I've always taken lessons from individuals. So I pick and choose like what I take good, the bad out of things, and sort of formulate this thought process of like what's consistent among all those people, in a good way, and then what's consistently bad, you know, in terms of things. So it helps you kind of learn those things as well. But I think the best lesson that anyone can take is their own journey. And again, paying attention to things that are happening in your life in ways that you're growing or not growing. You know, I think that's where the work really is. And have
accountability. People can be accountable to. Accountability partners are
for sure.
That reflection, you may think you're doing it, but that person reminds you, hey, you said you're going to do this. Hold you to your word.
Absolutely.
You know, hold you to your word. Because if you don't, then you'll just be judging yourself, thinking you're the
all the time,
or misjudge yourself. You know. So I like that. We're going to conclude it, and what we want to talk about in conclusion is pretty much say we are embracing the fact that we are people of change. We're people that have struggles. We're people that go through life in different realms of different time, different things. But if we can first acknowledge that, okay, we have these issues. We have these ways of what we think about ourselves. And if we can start facing them, admit that they are there, and work our way through them, you know, get accountability partners, stuff that we talked about earlier, have mentors, right? Well, then we can move to that next step of being and accomplish our goal that we set out to accomplish. And I don't believe that anyone can achieve what they want. I always believe that myself because of the confidence I have, but anyone out there who have doubts, they can achieve anything they want. Anyone who think that, well, I came from a small family. I only graduated from high school. I didn't make it to college. You can still accomplish what you want to do.
For sure.
There's so many greats out there that didn't have.
Didn't have the infrastructure to be able to do it.
That you had, but everyone out there can achieve it.
Yeah.
You just got to have the determination that you can. You don't doubt yourself. You know, have that confidence. Whoever you get that confidence from, I think also having we worship God. We find prayer.
Yeah.
You know, but whatever you find your quiet time in, whoever you decide you're going to meditate. What is meditation?
Yeah.
You know, really reflect. Having that quiet time is so important.
Oh my goodness, critical. Yeah.
Critical. So I think we should start thinking of people, encourage people to have that. And I want not only us, you know, to be reflective of that, but people that we encounter.
Right.
You know, for them to embrace that.
Yes.
You know, to have that time for yourself.
Yeah.
Whatever it is, have that quiet time, 15 minutes, 20 minutes.
Yep.
Have that time for you.
Yeah, it's so important, Wayne. I think people undervalue those quiet spaces. Sometimes we fill those quiet spaces with like negative thoughts. We fill those quiet spaces with challenges. It's a human thing to do at times. Devices. Right. You know, social media has been sort of it can put you in an abyss of just just like a sinkhole, you know, that you're kind of stuck in. But also media overall, TV, those kind of things. You kind of need to separate yourself from the world just a little bit. You know, for you and I, you know, we're Christians and we rest in the Lord, right? And the Lord gives us that sort of greater than ourselves. For some people who have not found the Lord or have a different belief systems, you know, you can still embrace those things. You know, defining what those quiet spaces are for yourself. You know, but you know, certainly I believe that's a critical part of everybody's journey. You know, because the world, you know, gets really, really loud at times. You know, and sometimes it takes you away from things, and it's really, really hard out here for a lot of people in a lot of different ways. We're dealing with like trauma and life circumstances and lived experiences that are very unique to them. But I think there are moments in life where you hold ownership of those things, and then you do something about it, right? And those quiet spaces for me are where you get to be reflective and introspective to be able to kind of grow from.
Said it well, man.
Thank you, brother.
You said it well.
I appreciate it.
I don't know if you have, I know you're a quiet guy, you're not quiet, but you try to stay out of the limelight. But can anybody follow you anywhere? Or tell about your nonprofit. Do you want to?
Oh, yeah, sure. Well, you can always find me at Romeo AZON on Instagram. That's not actually the first time I've ever said that, Wayne. So it's really weird for me to talk about social media because I'm not really like pumping out stuff like that. But I do have my wife and I have a nonprofit project that we International Pathways Education Consultants, and we founded it maybe 3 years ago, and what it focuses on is creating community and social sustainability in other countries, so in the areas of health and education. So we send medical equipment, hospital beds, all types of things that are donated from hospital systems and our partners, and educational resources to different countries. It's been really great to see what God has done with this little idea that we had and the level of support that we have around it. It's been really fulfilling. It's part of the legacy we want to kind of, we're givers, we care about people, and you know, when I talked about my wife, I had this vision, you know, I feel like it's something that we should be doing, and it sounds crazy because, you know, we have containers and things that we ship this stuff, and we're all doing it for the people who are receiving are not paying anything. It's all through donations and working through different partners to be able to do so. And so International Pathways Education Consultants, IPEC, if you go on Facebook, just put IPEC, IPEC into the search, you could find us there to learn more about the project. And if you go to ipacimpact.com, you'll get on our website to learn more about the work that we're doing there.
All right. So do you hear it?
All right.
Bro, thank you. Thank you so much for sharing, man.
This has been great. My first podcast.
Your first podcast.
With Wayne. WAMGET. Yeah, this is awesome.
That's awesome, man. Hey, guys, so definitely we want to strive to break through the cycle and support each other on the path of self-acceptance. Accepting yourself for who you are and be confident for who you are and go out there and break the imposter syndrome. Until next time, don't forget to subscribe, like this podcast. WAMGET out.